and national ones. We are asking for session proposals. We are not asking for session proposals. We are asking for issues to be discussed and to be of broad interest for the European community. That said, we do not reject or accept session proposals, but we try to find as many as proposals possible and cluster them in a way that it makes sense. This was a process which has evolved over the years. In the first years, sometimes there were proposals which, on our meaning, did fit to each other, but the submitter was not so happy with the others who were in the same basket. But this year we included subject matter experts and the process became more reliable. So to say that, for instance, when we were talking about security, we had a security expert, and this expert did really look at all proposals which were under the category and said, yes, this is security, and no, this is not security, this might go somewhere else, maybe human rights or accessibility. And then we discussed with the subject matter expert from another category if this fits in his category. This process was quite successful this year. We had very few or almost no complaints about, no, this is not where I want to be. And also the format of org teams, which follows thereafter, was rather easy. But before forming org teams, we usually, after the submission ends by the 31st of December each year, we meet in January in the respective host country to meet with the local community and to discuss all the proposals and possibly a draft program. This year we have been in Brussels in January. Next year we will be in Tallinn in Estonia. And we have around, let's say, 80 to 125 participants participating in such a meeting from all stakeholder groups. You can expect that half of them are from the local community and half of them are from the broader European area. So to say, the old 10 subjects which you can meet everywhere. And just hang on. Paulina, das geht jetzt nicht. It's my home office and my family just arrived. After this planning meeting, we start drafting a program. Maybe we might change this a little bit because we found out that only discussing proposals is not enough valuable for the community for such a planning meeting. So we might change on that. We might this time in January already discuss a draft proposal, which goes then out for communication and consultation out to the community. And then we get the feedback, we incorporate the feedback, we have another call with subject matter experts, and then more or less the final program is ready like 3 months before the event. And this is the process then when we start reaching out to possible focal points. In our submission form, we usually ask if you are willing to take up a role as a member of an org team, as a remote moderator, as a reporter, because these are the tasks which are already always needed. So with this, and with where we can see the strongest proposals and the readiness to participate in an org team, we then reach out to that people. It's always a kind of lottery to say. I mean, you never know how good are they in terms of delivering in time, because we have a timeline when to submit the title, when to submit the teaser, when to submit a complete session outline, when to assign speakers, and so on and so forth. And you never know really on which time, on how they will act on a timeline. Although we do briefing calls and all this, sometimes it's tricky. So because we had this sometimes not so good experience, we also reached out to the subject matter experts, which not only cluster the proposals, but which are also people who know the Eurodic process in and out, and can then somehow monitor up to 3 sessions in terms of, are they really following up? Do they need help? Do they need identify more speakers, and so on and so forth? So this was also a new element this year, and it was quite helpful. And then org teams basically have like 3 months to prepare the session. We are not at all intervening into the content. We are just reading all the communication, which is open and transparent. We do not offer mailing lists. We did in the past, but it worked not so well. But we have the Eurodig wiki, and on the Eurodig wiki, they can actually take note of all the calls they had, or some protocols. They can, you can visit the wiki. You will find it on the Eurodig website, but also directly under eurodigwiki.org. Some org teams are really good in taking track of the discussion they took, and also documenting actually with the process is open, or the org teams are open until the very last moment. We found out that some people, especially if you are in another country every year, that some people find out rather late about Eurodig, and then they say, oh my God, this is actually a topic I would really love to participate in, but now it's too late. The program is drafted, the org teams are formed. No, with the Eurodig it's not. They can still enter the process even if it's very late. They just have to respect what the org team has already decided. This is transparent in the ideal case, not always. And then they can catch on that phase, and can contribute still either to the as a speaker, or they can mobilize their community, participate in, and join the discussion. Oops. That me? No.
I'm not
you
sure.
can still hear me?
It sounds like a bit of delay, but move past that.
Okay, if you can still hear me.
I guess if you're not using the mic, if you could put mute, we should all do that.
I think it's
Marilyn, would you mind muting your mic? All right, Sandra, do you want to, sorry, would you like to try and continue? And I think maybe we've moved past those audio problems.
I'm not sure if it's my connection, but
it's okay now. I can hear you clearly now.
okay, that's good.
Okay.
So actually, I more or less finished my description of the participation process already. This year we are at the moment in the stage of call for issues, which will finish on 31st of December. We will of course promote it during the upcoming IGF, and then we go until June next year, when the next Eurodig takes place, with more or less the same procedure, because it proved to be meanwhile quite a stable procedure. So open to answer your questions.
Does anybody have any questions for what Sandra just canvassed? And by the way, just to let everybody know, in the group chat, I posted a link to the report from Eurodig. The link includes the words "messages from Brussels." And if you go to that link and head to pages 46 and 47, there's a graphic of Eurodig's process. So I think this is an interesting opportunity for us to ask questions about some of the process. So if somebody would like to start off, please go ahead. Any questions? Okay, well, I have, hold on. I have some questions. So Sandra, okay, I'm just looking at the process here. So I guess I have a question about the org teams, and you had said that they're almost a bit of a lottery, but that anybody can join the org teams. So do the org teams do they work together and update their progress on the wiki, or do they touch base from time to time with the SMEs or the whole group, or how are you able to join an org team and kind of be able to see the work that they're doing if you're just coming in for the first time?
Okay, I would say this question is twofold. First of all, it's the Eurodic Secretariat and the social matter experts. They are reading all the communication among the org teams and are also participating in the calls. The Secretariat mainly just to follow up that session principles are kept, and the subject matter expert is following up that they are right on track of what has been intended with this session. Anyone else outside who is not yet involved but would like to get involved, and I just paste a link. As an example for a wiki page, we have a mailing list, or actually it's not a mailing list, it's more a functional email address, which is workshop1ws1@eurodic.org. And anyone interested in such a session can simply contact this email address and will immediately get in contact with the focal point and with the subject matter expert and the secretariat. So that even if a subject matter expert or focal point is not really following up, the secretariat can take note of this request and can put them in touch with each other. I've just seen that you clicked on the discussion tab. This is the session where the focal point actually was a totally loss, and luckily Uriel Lenzipuro and Michael Ocha took over, because in the discussion tab you should actually see the discussion which has taken place, meeting minutes, dates for calls, and so on and so forth. So they were quite good at the end in providing the template. This template is the same for every session, but because it was a little bit difficult, they were not able to really take track of the discussion page.
It's a very good system, actually. If you look at the details and amount of information available and all the key participants and discussants, and also the option for discussion, it's a very well designed page. It really lends to transparency and participation from people who are starting at a later point versus have been there historically, and expands the base, so to speak.
And one purpose we also follow with the wiki is that we actually want to act as a sort of an archive on what has been discussed over the years. You will see we also uploaded the transcript and the video records so that you can actually look at what has been discussed last year and maybe can follow up with the discussion from last year.
Mm-hmm.
That's extremely important, and it's great to see, because as we know so often in this space, discussions can have a tendency to kind of repeat themselves, and so if you have the archive to understand how you can build forward on the discussion, that's extremely helpful. Could you explain how you decide how you shape the plenary sessions at Eurodic? Like how do you decide what's going to be discussed there, and who organizes those plenary sessions?
Okay, there is actually no distinction between organizing a plenary session and a workshop.
Mhm.
Both have to follow the session principles, which are the same. For the plenary, we do really allow a plenary style. For workshop, it's almost forbidden to make a small panel because we want to have a real workshop atmosphere, roundtable or interactive formats. This year we had a little bit of a difference because we had so many high participants, which of course you have to accommodate. You have to give them a speaking slot. And org teams are not always aware because usually they contact the secretariat asking, where's my speaking slot? So this year it was a little bit differently, and we worked more closely together with the org teams in order to place the high-level people in their sessions. So to say, when we had a request or a proposal from the commission, person XYZ is coming, and of course we do not want to miss that person, then we get in touch with the plenary team or with the workshop team and said, hey, can you please accommodate him or her? But of course, still, we didn't want to have a panel more than 5 people. Well, we had a panel with more than 5 people.
It's okay. I mean, sometimes they can't always be so hard and fast, right? Does anybody else have any questions for Sandra at this point?
Yeah, I have a question about what's the process for addressing sort of issues around inclusion and diversity if that's coming up? What is the process? And I'm fairly new to the ecosystem, so I'd love to hear what's the process in sort of addressing and acknowledging dissenting voices and resolving issues, especially from one experience, we had some difficulties around diversity and inclusion, and how have you addressed that in the past?
Speaking about diversity, I like to pick up one example, gender balance. This is probably one of the diversity issues you are talking about. I mean, it's not a secret, many panels are male-dominated panels. And I mean, I can say that because I'm a woman. I'm actually a little bit bored of this gender discussion. My personal feeling is this problem will be resolved rather soon. I mean, just look at this call, all talented women here. So we don't have this problem in the future, I'm convinced. At the moment, of course, we have to deal with high-level people, which are usually men. Just to give you an example, in Berlin, we have been extremely criticized for having the first session with the ICANN CEO, with people from the German ministry, and so on and so forth. For really high level, were good people. But we have been criticized only for the gender issue. And this was really a bad start of actually good conference. And those people who were criticizing it in the first place, they realized that the overall Eurodic gender balance was actually quite extraordinary and was not an issue at all. So what we did in Brussels now, because we were somehow going into the same direction, we said the opening session is an open mic session. There is no high level something. We have a welcome from the host and from the Eurodic, but that's it. And then we start right away with a open mic session. And luckily enough, also the participation from women and from minorities like youth or disabled people, elderly people, they took the floor. They used that chance. We promoted it a little bit more in advance, and they took that chance. And so we had the first criticism was not an issue at that point anymore. With the other sessions, workshops, and plenaries, we have session principles, and you will also find them on the Eurodic website. I just paste the link. Okay, where's the chat? Here's the chat. Okay. These are the session principles. So there you will actually find what our rules are and where the Secretariat is taking track that these rules are kept. Another example, youth, also usually considered as a minority group. We organize in advance sort of a summer school, the New Media Summer School, where the youth can prepare themselves and draft their messages. You will also find that in the messages from Brussels that they have a youth section. And in terms of preparing them, brings them more into the discussion at Eurodic. So they lost the possible shy, actually they are not shy at all. So they are active participants already. They do their little protests for Snowden or against geo-blocking or whatsoever. So this is another effort we tried in the past. Does this answer your question, or do you want to know more about other minorities?
No, I was just looking to sort of like, do you just trust that people will follow the requirement for, or, the suggestion for diversity, both gender and other ethnic minorities? But I was curious as to how do you go about, certain people, for example, in some of the conferences I speak at, have a requirement that every panel must include, certain aspects of it. So I was just curious if that's a system that you follow in Eurodic, and what's your experience been, sort of like following it as a stated principle, or as a loosely suggested, or do you as a group or organizing committee kind of go around like, hey, this panel is not looking diverse at all, we need to have more women in it or something? I was just curious about how do you go about addressing that once you see that in the planning stages as a problem.
Yes, we do this from the Secretariat side. We monitor that session principles, and this is one of the principles are kept.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Marilyn, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you. I actually want to welcome you, Sandra. Thank you so much also for your work on the NRI Coordinators Network call. I'm sorry that Anya was not able to join us today. I did invite her. I thought she would welcome the opportunity to hear this presentation. We do have at the IGF USA a statement of principles, and we have had significant work over the years we've been in existence. I know some on this call are new, but others on this call are old hands. I apologize we have such a small group, but I'm sure this call is being recorded and will be listened to by others from the IGF USA. So a couple of comments I'm going to make. We have a very strong statement of purpose, which we continually publish, and happy to share that with you. It's in a PowerPoint. I published it to our list. It's probably very similar also to the work that you've done. We have had, of course, challenges on panel diversity, but we've done, I think, much better recently when we've strongly encouraged all of our organizers to seek to have a balance, and even when they can't find speakers, we try to then augment that by having diversity from the floor. I'm very familiar with the work you've done in Eurodig, and I know you've done a lot of that as well to try to bring diversity of perspectives. One other comment I'm going to make is in our, Susan, are you okay? In our past statement of purpose, we have called for participants who are interested in contributing positively. And the reason that we've done that is we've had a few situations where people have been interested in being disruptive. And I just wanted to ask if you've had that problem as well. I don't mean someone expressing a difference of opinion, but doing so constructively, but actually being an effort to be disruptive, to break down the process. And I just wondered if you've had that process, that situation.
So I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to intervene here as the chair of the SWG, because Marilyn, I don't think that you're characterizing what's been going on very accurately, and it's actually a misrepresentation. So we are having Sandra, we're having a conversation on developing a governance structure, and right now we're actually having an open consultation, which is why your presentation is very helpful. So the chairs of the IGF USA, in our last administrative committee meeting, we had discussed using the term positive contribution, and actually the co-chairs agreed to remove that qualifier because it could be used in an arbitrary way. So I think that some of Marilyn's questions are, yes, like some of her intervention and questions are really quite interesting. So I think if Judith, if we're taking that interpretation that we're talking about disrupt people on panels as opposed to the organizing process, I'm not sure that was something that we had this year, but at the IGF USA, but if you have anybody who just really does on a panel try to derail a panel or a workshop session, what is kind of the normative culture in dealing with that? Like how would the room respond to that? Or is it really just up to maybe a strong moderator to help guide that?
Is your question more about the preparation process or the actual session when it's underway?
Marilyn, were you referring to, Judith says you're referring to a panel, but are you referring to the preparation process?
Sorry, I was just, actually, I think it can occur in both instances. I was just asking what the experience was. We did have a situation in a panel in the past. I'm not naming a year, and Judith may want to comment more, but we also have had the problem, derailing is different than objecting. And I just wanted to make that distinction, that I'm not talking about objecting, having a different view. I'm talking about an effort to derail.
I would say there's definitely a little bit of bullying in IGF. I've experienced it, and people have, but there's not really a place other than, tough it up and, just trust that over a period of time it will sort itself out. But unfortunately, that is there, the bullying, the nastiness a little bit. And I think as a person of color and a woman, I'm just used to that, and working through that is my experience. But I'd love to hear how you've dealt with it in the past.
Okay, I must admit we never had that issue during a session. During a session, everyone was behaving nicely. We sometimes had little issues, but I wouldn't call them really issues. I think that's just the normal way of multi-stakeholder work. Beforehand, that somebody was trying to get his topic into that session and putting some pressure on other people, or being too demanding in terms of getting his message into the session. This we had sometimes, and here it was always helpful that the secretariat, as a sort of a neutral observer, could step into the process, because when the session org team is getting too angry with each other, then we could actually act like a mentor, and it was Wolf in the past, who is not the one who is stepping in on the first place, but when he gets a feeling that things are going wrong, then he steps in, talks to the focal point first, and maybe to others heavily involved, and then sending a message to all of them. And in the past, it worked well with this system. Yes.
Thanks, and I think just kind of segueing into the role there of could you describe for us the role of the secretariat? So the role that you do, what are the responsibilities of the secretariat? Could you briefly describe how you find funding, or how you're able to procure funding, and also as as the Secretariat, Sandra, and I know you have 2 other colleagues who you work with, are you also part of an org team, or do you also weigh in on the substance of the session, or is that separate from your role?
Meanwhile, that's totally separate. There have been occasions at the beginning of Eurodic when, for instance, Wolf Ludwig was also moderating a session on media because he is a journalist. But when Eurodic evolved, and it was in 2012 when we founded the association, when everything becomes more serious, we found that as a secretariat, we should be absolutely neutral and not interfere in any content work. We even go that far when participating in other forums, when representing Eurodic, we not talk about content, we talk about Eurodic and the process only. So to say, I will never speak about the development of the Internet of Things or any other matters. I will purely talk about Eurodic, its process, its objectives, how it's organized, and how do we collaborate and bring the multi-stakeholder model as such forward, nothing else. We are all not, or the other way around, we are all freelancers. None of us has a contract with anyone. So of course we do have another life, especially Lorena, she's also active in many other forums, and also Wolf. But when they speak in other forums, they are speaking and they really take the Eurodic head off, and they have to say, or it has to be clear that they are not speaking on behalf of Eurodic, but on behalf of their own or on behalf of another organization they are active in. Regarding the tasks, well, it sounds not much, but it is quite a lot of coordination work to follow all these org teams, to provide the wiki platform, to help them uploading the content, to organize the processes, the feedbacks, the retreats, the meeting minutes. The Secretariat is only facilitating the ground for others to play. We have institutional partners which give us advice, which provide advice in terms of how to move forward strategically. These partners are at the moment the Commission, the Council of Europe, the Swiss government, RIPE NCC, ICANN, Euralo, the Internet Users Representation within ICANN, and ISOC. And we are in talks with a business partner at the moment, because this stakeholder group is not yet represented within our partnerships. So they are giving strategic advice, they are involved in the program planning process, they help us reaching out to their respective communities, they helping us to get contact with high-level people from governments or reaching out to MEPs and so on and so forth. One thing which becomes more and more important, meanwhile, that Eurodic is invited to present, just like here, somewhere else. Next week or last week, and in 3 weeks' time, I will be invited to speak in front of the Commission, giving them advice on their strategy. This becomes more and more important. This is something which, at the moment, just is starting to evolve. Yeah. And then, of course, we provide all the outreach material, messages, printing stuff. So it's had a lot of coordination work. And for me, it's like more than half of a job per month. It's more than 100 hours a month. Or no, let's say average 100 hours a month.
So you had said, and maybe, so we have a few more faces who have joined the call. I don't know if you guys want to introduce yourself to Sandra. Dustin, do you want to say?
Sure, yeah, sorry, I was just unmuting. Yeah, I'm Dustin Phillips. I work with ICANN Wiki, so, yeah.
And I know Sandra, and I look forward to seeing her next week. So
Kristen?
I go way back.
Yep. Well, Christian Dawson's joined, and he's, Christian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, this is Christian Dawson. I am one of the co-chairs of the this working group, and I am with the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. Apologies for being late.
Sandra, you had mentioned that, so you have mentioned that you're in discussions with a private sector group to join the partnership. Is there a what is the, would you mind explaining a little bit about like the partnership or the group that supports Eurodig? It's my understanding that you guys developed an association recently, and we don't, of course, IGF USA, we don't have like a legal structure, but it would be interesting, I think, to hear about the kind of the governance structure that underpins the work of Eurodig as extremely successful event.
Thanks, Susan, for the flowers. Well, the idea to establish a European IGF was born in 2008, and this was also the first year when the first Eurodig started, with the full support of the Council of Europe at that time. So in this manner, we operated until 2012, and at that stage, the association or the event became so big, and of course, we had to somehow collect funding to finance all this. That purely for the sake of having a bank account, we have to we have to be a legal body. And we were looking around across Europe, what might be the best solution to found an association. Association in Germany, for instance, is a hell lot of complications around. So we decided for Switzerland, and the IGFSA and also the GAC Secretariat, they are also based on the same principles of Swiss association. Still, having such an association, you have to follow some basic rules, having a membership, having a general assembly, and the general assembly is the main organ which can decide. And a board is useful in order, because not always 25, 40, 30 people can talk together, so it's good to have something like a board. And this was actually the next step we went now after 2012. It was the process started in 2015 last year, and it was finished at Eurodig in Brussels to revise the statutes and to really set up a governance structure which has its checks and balances. Because in the first years, what we received on funding and donations, this sometimes went to my private bank account, and this was not very transparent. But I mean, of course, when somebody asked where to transfer the money to, Council of Europe or anyone else cannot take that money, so it had to be another association person whatsoever. So it went through my private one. Then when we had the association, we had at least this part resolved, and we had an official bank account with 2 people being able to make transactions. But now it's also a matter of representation and a matter of who takes decisions. And here we have now institutional partners which are not necessarily members of the association, because the association is the construct to run the secretariat basically, and the institutional partners are responsible, next to the community of course, to develop the event forward. The reason why we have a distinction here is that institutional partners are institutions, as the name say, and institutions can always or have difficulties to become a member of something where they have to execute voting rights. For instance, ICANN, the Commission, RIPE, NCC, they cannot easily become a member, where they then have to assign a person which takes on voting rights, because this implies a full procedure on their end, and this is simply overdone. So they are in a loose cooperation as partners. This is just they send whomever they think should participate in the process. And but on the other hand, we have the association, which is a bunch of individuals which can, of course, execute voting rights and all these things because they act in their individual capacity. And it happens that some people are representing the institution, but on the other hand are individual members. But when they change the institution, they will still remain an individual member of the association with full voting rights and possibility becoming a board member and whatsoever. So at the moment, it's the secretariat which is dealing with both of the layers, with the event layer, of course, but also with the association matters. And the secretariat is represented by me at the moment, so I have full flexibility in terms of hiring and firing, and I have also flexibility until a certain amount of money to spend that money. I'm an ex officio member of the board, so that I will always be able to explain my board colleagues what is happening, why, and then we can discuss the best solution. But I'm accountable to the board, so I have to report to the board. It's maybe a little bit similar like ICANN. And the board, of course, is accountable to the General Assembly, which takes place once a year, usually then back to back with the Eurodic, where a new board can be elected. And we are currently in the process of drafting rules of operation. They are not yet finished. We have them in the draft version, but they will describe how to do elections and all these things more in detail. In the statutes, we stated only those things which are extremely necessary to be in statutes, but statutes changing process, as you all know, it's difficult. So we put all the details into a annex document, which is called Rules of Operation.
A quick question on clarification what you said. So do you have a budget that you establish at the beginning of the year of all your activities and gets adopted by your board, and then do you present that? How do you share that with your community, and is that shared with your community?
Mm-hmm. Let me also share a link with you. We have a donors handout, which we distribute to donors at the beginning of each year. And this handout is public. And this handout includes a budget, how we are going to intend to spend the donations we receive. I forward you the whole link.
And Marilyn, you have the institutional history. Do we have a similar process of, pardon me for not knowing this already, but do we have a process of adopting a budget upfront and then reporting that budget to the community? And is that posted anywhere online? I know the sites have transitioned recently, but I wasn't able to find any budget for IGF USA in any of the open documents. Is that something that we share with steering committee and community, Marilyn? Maybe you can share that as well.
Well, first of all, let me see if David is on the call. Christian, did you invite David to this call?
Man, everybody's been invited to this call.
No, I know. I just, I think Christian is seeing him later, so I thought he might know if he was able to.
David is not on the call. David had asked me for a briefing later. He was unable to attend.
Okay.
Shane was going to attend. Both were extended invitations and made part of the process that brought us to today.
I just wanted to ask before I responded.
Okay.
One of the two of them should respond. We do have a budget. I'm also a little, I know the transition to the new website has been confusing. We do always publish the draft budget. We ask for comments on the draft budget. The budget covers the major areas that we will have expenses in that will, and then we also send letters of invitation to sponsors. We have a history, and that's on our website of the sponsors. I think, Sandra, we have some sponsors that overlap with you. We have Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Internet Society, ICANN. I'm just looking at your sponsorship list, affiliates that is overlapping with you. We do not qualify for IGF SA funding as we are not from a developing country. And I know as a member of the board of IGF SA, the funding that was given to you by IGFSA had to be targeted to bringing attendees from developing countries. But yes, we do publish a draft budget. It's open to all of the steering group committee members, and the budget is the cost we expect, and then we put forward the letters of invitation for sponsorship. Sponsorship is completely independent from speaking opportunities. We do also try to have a reception. I think you do that as well. And that does offer an opportunity for sponsors to be recognized. We have a pretty consistent base of sponsors from year to year to year. And if Ritu, I'll be happy to post those. I'll ask Ashley David to post those lists to you so you can see them more directly. But we have basically the same sponsors. Much of we have ICANN, we have ISOC, we have the RAR, we have...
I actually didn't have a question about the sponsors. I had a question about the actual budget that oversees sort of the overall expenditures, but not, sponsors are recognized in most events. I just want to make sure I clarify my question. It's not the list of sponsors, it's the actual draft budget and final budget. Is that posted online? Because I haven't been able to find it.
It is posted, and I'll ask David to repost it.
Thank you very much.
Sandra, in terms of the donors and their contributions to Eurodig, I'm not familiar with, this type of European law, but are the contributions tax deductible? Is that something that happens in Europe? Because in the States, if you're dealing with a charitable organization, if you donate a certain amount, you can make that tax deductible for financial or in-kind donations of a certain amount. So I didn't know if there's any sort of extra incentive, to give to support Eurodig in that sense.
I'm not sure if I got your question right. You mean if somebody is giving a donation, does he can get anything in reverse?
In the States, it may not be a European concept, but I should know this, but in the States, if you donate to a charitable entity, so an entity that is not a for-profit entity, but one that is charitable and recognized under state and federal law as being charitable, you can actually claim that amount and deduct it from your taxes that you pay at the end of the year. So does that exist in...
Okay, we do not provide any receipt or bill or something like this, which they can put forward to the taxes. Nothing specific. With the Commission, of course, we have to follow a procedure to go through and do a report and stuff like this. Also with the Council of Europe and other official entities. With companies, we just submit an invoice. And I'm not sure if they can use that for their tax reversion. I don't think so, because in Germany this would require an additional paper, but it might be different for companies which are also from the US, and they might just use it. Regarding, want to come back to Ritu's question, you have seen that until this moment we published the estimated budget, and in the past we reported on the final budget to partners only, and maybe sometimes when we met at Eurodig meetings and everybody who was interested in Eurodig was also informed in this meeting, because it was not a secret, but we did not publish it. Now I did ask all the sponsors if they agree that we publish the numbers they donate. All of them agreed that we can publish these numbers, and we will also then, in the same manner as we have the estimated budget with the same budget items, we will report on what has been spent finally on this budget. But note, we can only report on the Secretariat's budget, which is responsible for the process, for travel support, but it's not including the venue costs or the the gala. This is all in the hands of the host. With one exception, Sofia. Sofia had no money at all, so we were paying everything. But this should not be the actual case. But with our internal finance flow, we are prepared, or our aim is to be prepared in time in the event that we don't find a future host which can pay for the event, that we go to a country and take all the costs on the Eurodic budget, on the Eurodic cost, so that we are able to finance at least one full event. This is the aim.
That's extremely helpful. Judith, you have a question. I think we should begin to wrap this up so we can have a little bit of time to discuss the statement of purpose for the IGF USA. And Sandra, it's up to you if you want to stay for that. Certainly, no worries if you don't want to, because you've already been so generous with your time. But Judith, do you want to ask your question?
Two questions. One is, are your events live? I posted on the chat. Are they captioned? And because I know your event is for several days, and I was wondering, we only do a one-day event, but I was wondering if you captioned them, or was it a requirement for getting the European Union funding to do that? And then I guess the other question is so when you go to different countries, the countries pay some of the cost of the event. I was just wondering about that, because in here we only had it in the US, so we don't have a region one. And I actually don't even think we get any funding at all from the US government.
Mm-hmm. So yes, when we go to different countries, the host each year pays for the local costs, for the venue, for the food, for the gala, for technical infrastructure, etc., etc. So they pay for this, and the Eurodic's secretariat pays only for the process. So this is one. It was a little bit different in the beginning, in the very early days, where all the institutions just put some money together. But at least since 2011, 10 already, yeah, I would say since 2010, we have a division between the host budget and the secretariat's budget. On captioning, yes, we do captioning, and I would say from the very early days, we were actually the first one, with the help of Diplo Foundation, who did live stream captioning. So captioning was included in the WebEx. This was a novum at that time. And only one time we could not afford captioning, which was Sofia, where we had to pay everything. And by the way, we are working with a company from the US. It's Caption First. They are the same people as for the IGF. They are very reliable. They do a great job. And it's really a pleasure to work with them. And we will continue working with them also, because they are meanwhile very familiar with our terminology.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's really helpful. We use Caption First this year, but it's great to see that you guys have been doing it. I've been pushing it for all, and it's always a struggle. And this year we got a funder to fund the live captioning. I just have one other question. Do you have a limit on what your sponsors can give? Because I know we had like a set limit of that sponsors could not give above, because we wanted to make sure that it was still open to everyone.
I wouldn't call it a limit, but when you go on page 6 of the donors handout, you will see that the gold sponsor can provide 20,000 euros. We would have not the problem to introduce a platinum sponsor. So yes, we take all the money we can get. But of course, we have to balance the resource where the money comes from. I mean, we cannot be financed to 70% by the European Commission and just get a little bit from somebody else. So the overall balance of where we get the money from must be balanced, so that no one has that we are not in the light of being taken over by an institution or by a company. Our approach is, and this actually works quite well, we collect a lot of little money. We collect sums like €1,000 from some CCTLDs which cannot afford more, or the usual range of CCTLDs is €5,000. The good thing here is that if one CCTLD or company is not able to sponsor in a year, it will not break our budget totally. It will just be a loss, which we might find another one in this year, or we can somehow deal with it. This brings us to a quite long sponsor list, but it gives us also security in terms of we are not dependent on any single resource. Even if the biggest resource, which is at the moment Google, is giving the most of the money, even if they don't give money anymore, we will not die.
And just have I have a question for you. So on just a few more, and then we'll let you go. But on the board of the association, just because we're also examining this again, we have this open consultation on the organizational structure until the end of this month. So it would be helpful to know. So how do people join the board of the association at Eurodeg? How are the chairs recognized? Are there any rotation requirements by stakeholders? And I guess, yeah, those three questions are useful.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first board, which was established after the formation of the association, were people which don't even remember that they have been on the board. It was just some names, and it was never working as a board. We take it a little bit more seriously since Brussels this year, and we established a new board which should represent all stakeholder groups. And we called it an interim board because there was no real nomination and election process beforehand. So I just made a proposal who would be willing from the collaboration beforehand. And this proposal was discussed, and people present at the General Assembly agreed to this proposal, but to call it an interim board for 1 year before we can really have a call for participation or a call for nomination, and then elect a longer board next year in Tallinn. And well, the president, there's one president, or I think it can be even two presidents. They are then assigned within the board. This doesn't have to be done by the General Assembly. It's just among those people. They are signing one of them. And it should be 5 to 7 people, including me as ex officio, or the Secretary General as ex officio member.
Okay, it looks like Marilyn had a constructive question. Can you also explain the requirements of the General Assembly? Or who populates the General Assembly?
Okay. At the moment, we have founding members which have a voting right. These are the members who founded the association in 2012. These are like 28 people, and they are all still around. They are all still active, and you can meet them during any of the events. We know that we had to set up a procedure on how to include new members. And this is also what we've done with the new statutes. So we established a new membership category, which is the associate membership. They have not yet voting rights, but can participate in general assemblies and in discussions. And by the way, Eurodeg meetings are open. So, I mean, even the General Assembly is open to anyone who want to join us. So associate members can discuss, but they have no voting rights. But associate members, as long as they really had a stake at Eurodic and they really participated in the development of Eurodic with more than organizing a session or more than being a speaker on 2 panels, then they might be co-opted as full members by the other founding members or by the other full members. So at the moment, we have founding members only. In the future, we will have founding and full members, which have voting rights, and we will have associate members, which have no voting rights. And then we have, of course, the community, which is invited just to join us.
So I want to thank you for your time today and the things that we've learned from you. We are going to transition our meeting. We're a little bit over schedule in starting to open conversations about our organization statement of purpose. So I think with great thanks, we will move on to the next part of our agenda. Really appreciate the time you've given us.
Okay, thank you for inviting me, and I will leave the meeting then and see you, I guess, some of you in Hyderabad and many of you in Guadalajara.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
With the remaining 20 minutes, I think we only have time to introduce the concept of the statement of purpose and decide collectively on next steps from here. Marilyn has done a fantastic job of giving us a starting point for our conversations. And Marilyn, I'm wondering if you would be willing to walk us through the document that you sent and that we disseminated to this group.
I'd be happy to, but I didn't see my PowerPoint distributed. I saw something else distributed.
It was distributed on a couple of different occasions. People should have it in messages on October 16th. And
Christian, listen, I'd be happy to, but the document that I received from all of you actually ignored my PowerPoint and had a different, so I don't want to, I'd love to comment, but I'm looking at something else that you guys distributed, which didn't include my PowerPoint. Can I walk through my PowerPoint?
Would love it if you would walk through your PowerPoint. Your PowerPoint was presented in the distributed materials when we put out this meeting. And if it didn't make it into every one of the reminders, apologies.
It didn't make it into mine, but I'll walk through it anyway.
Okay. It has been presented to the group, and it was presented beyond just the SWG. It was also put to the main list. And so everybody should have it.
Fantastic. So let me start out by saying that, in my view, in order to plan our future, we need to study our past. And we have had a past. I know some of the participants are new to the IGF USA, and sometimes it's difficult to find the historical materials, but if you do a easy search, I don't name a particular search engine, do a search on the work that IGF USA and Elon University has done, you will find a really easy to review set of materials. We launched IGF USA in 2009 after 3 years of multiple 3 per year preparatory sessions. I'm going to skip a couple of the PowerPoints and go to when we launched IGF USA, having done these multiple half-day dialogues. We went through many of the struggles that I'm seeing embodied in what we're going through today. We had many people who wanted to lead. We had many people who wanted to contribute, but we were struggling with the fact that internet governance was not even understood in those days. We were able to launch in 2009, and we had a statement of purpose. I inserted that in the material that I distributed. The statement of purpose was that we were a multi-stakeholder effort to raise awareness about internet governance issues, to contribute to awareness about the Internet Governance Forum. We are a one-day forum to engage civil society, governments, technologists, researchers, industry, and academia in discussions about topics that are being deliberated at a global level regarding governance of the internet, including management of critical internet resources, privacy, cybersecurity, access, openness, freedom of expression, child online safety, capacity building, and development. At the IGF USA, like the IGF itself, all parties participate on an equal footing. We identify and discuss issues, and participants help to broaden the understanding and identify best practices. We had a very broad steering group in 2009 of over 60 interested participants. We did not have a website until we established a name site in order to meet the criteria. I will not read on because I think it's self-explanatory. 2009 was hosted at CSIS Pro Bono. 2010 was hosted at the Georgetown University Center, and the statement of purpose was refined a little bit, but remained pretty much the same. The statement of purpose for the IGF 2016, I am skipping ahead, I think is where we should start with our functional discussion, and that is that we are a multi-stakeholder effort to illuminate issues, cultivate constructive discussions about the future of the internet. IGF USA provides a domestic forum in the US to engage civil society, governments, technologists, research scientists, industry, and academia, helping to create partnerships, coalitions, and dialogues that demonstrate best practices and help move policy forward. I think that is pretty much where we are, and then I did write a broader statement of purpose, but the baseline, I think, is where we left ourselves. In the broader statement, I included a recognition that with the renewed 10-year mandate for the IGF and the call for the inclusion of the Sustainable Development Goals and Internet governance, the IGF, via its steering committee, which is our broadest, I will just digress from reading, our broadest participatory platform, should examine how to make a positive contribution at the national, subnational, and global level on internet governance issues and awareness about internet governance. We include all parties at IGF USA, including government representatives who must act on an equal footing, not taking on overarching roles, but contributing at a level of all participants. I think that's a really important message because that is the leadership that we provide to other governments who sometimes think that the IGF should be controlled by governments and we must be a role model. Thank you, Christian.
Marilyn, I thank you very much for that that perspective and also a proposal on how to move forward. In the last 15 minutes, I think that this group should decide on a path forward on how we as a group that is partially represented by the people on this call, but needs to be greatly represented by the entire IGF USA community, is going to settle on a statement of purpose. Marilyn has put forth a draft. That draft is something that we can now figure out how we are going to discuss. Other people can put forward their own drafts, their own revisions, and we can reach a point where we as a SWG can agree on a piece of text sufficient that we want to bring it to the broader community for broad input. That's the ultimate goal. And I'm actually turning to the community for suggestions on how they would like to see us move from Maryland's draft statement of purpose to a point where we can all come together, because we're certainly not going to do it wordsmithing this and surveying other options within the next 15 minutes. So Marilyn put into the text that comments on her and edits to her draft and other drafts are welcome. We, as SWG co-chairs, can take as a takeaway from this process an opportunity for people to submit comments and alternatives, and we'll attempt to take various things that are sent to us and put forward community proposals. Are there people on the call that have specific comments that they want to make on the proposed statement of purpose that Marilyn has put forward at this time?
I just have, hi, this is Susan. I just have some observations. So I think that's Marilyn's text is a really good place to start. Just a few ideas. I wonder, because we've, you know, in conversations with, at the SWG meetings, we have had discussions about keeping things in a rather short and pithy, to kind of a short and pithy description. And I think that it's because, for example, the topics that are discussed at the IGF USA or the different types of stakeholders are enunciated elsewhere, we can probably generalize those within the statement of purpose, so it doesn't become like a laundry list of, sometimes laundry lists are necessary, and I think we have one of those in the draft principles. But that might be a way to kind of tighten up the language in the statement of purpose. Also, what was mentioned during the last administrative committee where we had the discussion to open up the proposed organizational structure for community comment was that also we should look at the statement of purpose and the org structure and the principles all together. And so I think that it would be good to have discussions to continue this discussion onto the next meeting of the SWG, where we can act as where we can use the space to be able to discuss the draft. And I think it would also be constructive. I know sometimes the mailing list can go for people to send their draft suggestions to the mailing list, and I guess we're moving over to Slack for a lot of things. So, so if people haven't joined the Slack channel, that may also be worthwhile because we could then have discussion there. But all in all, those are just early level reflections on the proposed draft that Marilyn has put forward, and thank you, Marilyn, for taking the initiative to circulate that draft. But I think it's less of the wording. I think maybe first discussions should focus on certain of those elements that are contained within the draft. Like, to what extent do we view ourselves as serving the purpose of being a preparatory function for the global IGF? Do we do that function? Do we also serve a domestic purpose where we are interested in, yes, raising interest about internet governance, but also hearing from Americans and discussing with Americans the internet policy challenges and questions that they are facing and would like to discuss in a multi-stakeholder, open and inclusive forum? So I think some of these is focusing less so on the words of the proposal at this point. I think first we should probably discuss those bigger ideas.
So it sounds as though this sets us up perfectly for having one more meeting of this group to go ahead and discuss this statement of purpose. I believe that we probably need calls for suggested edits, revisions, and simply other versions prior to having that meeting. And so the next step may be to report in the minutes that that we have had this initial discussion, make sure that we circulate Marilyn's document, and call on people in advance of that conversation to initiate that discussion process, to create a venue for it, and then have a conversation in the next call, trying to drive us forward to something that this group can then put forward to the greater community. And honestly, if we all agree on next steps, I think we can probably have our last 5 minutes back.
Yay!
Christian, sorry, I agree with the 5 steps, but I'm just going to say it, participation in this session is very small. And I think we need to respect that and note that. I don't know who 703-948-3822 is. And I think it'd be good if you could get them to identify themselves. But we need to understand if we have 10 participants. Is that what we have, 10 participants? I think 10, maybe 8. We can summarize what we heard, but we need to respect, we need broader comment. I think that's what you're proposing, and if that's what you're proposing, I agree, but please do list the fact we had 8 participants.
That's exactly, sorry. I thought you were done. I'm sorry, Marilyn. I didn't mean to talk over you.
I'm done enough.
Okay. That was my intention. The goal is to try and create a deeper venue to make sure that we do outreach and try to get as many participants as possible. This process does not end when the participants who have agreed to help this working group have put forward a work product. This process ends when the broader community has had a chance to do outreach and to comment on it. And so my proposal is to move this to another time to try and get as many people as we can onto the next call to discuss this, knowing that inclusiveness is extremely important, but then to not be satisfied there even, to make sure that this is taken to the broader community for full public comment so that this can be embraced by everybody. So Marilyn, that's my long way of saying completely agree with you and eager to push it forward in that direction. So with that, we'll go ahead and start working on minutes. We'll work on next steps and takeaways and drive this conversation forward to the next call where we can hopefully have done enough preparatory work as a community that we can come to some sort of conclusion. But Marilyn, I want to thank you tremendously once again for giving us the background and the first steps to try and lead us down a path that's hopefully going to get us to where we need to get to. Your work is appreciated.
Christian, this is Irene with VeriSign. Since my number was just cited, I just wanted to say that this is Irene with VeriSign, the 703 number. And I introduced myself at the beginning of the call. Perhaps Marilyn was late and that's why I didn't hear it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irene.
Fantastic. I think it's important to have a good record of how diverse the participants are. And I think it's great that this is actually added to the diversity of the participants. Thanks, Irene.
And with that, we will draw a close to meeting 6 of the SWG, and we look forward to the next.
Bye
Take care.
all. See
Goodbye.
some of you in Hyderabad.
Bye, thanks.